Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. This is Chad Himes, joined by my friend Bob Stewart. Bob, say hello.
Chad, how you doing, buddy?
Bob, I am so excited about what we have coming today. I know you are as well.
Chad, I would at one point in my life, I would have called myself an athlete, right? And we have just one of the most phenomenal athletes with us today. And since this season is about winning, man, I'm really excited to talk to this gentleman.
Oh, yeah. And I do consider myself still an athlete with the Spartan races, the marathons and stuff that I'll run. Yet I couldn't keep up with this guy. And this is amazing, Bob. I mean, we're talking about the GOAT in all of the Super Bowl conversations that have recently been happening. Forget it. This guy needs to make the list. So, folks, I can't wait to bring him on the call and get this started for you today. We have the pleasure of being joined by Ironman Chris Nikic. Now, you might not know the name because you don't follow Ironman as a sport, but I'm going to tell you after this episode, you will. Not only know the name, start following Ironman because you're going to want to follow what this guy is doing. I'm going to just lay a little bit out here so you understand. And folks, so our audience is ready for this conversation. We have with us not only Chris, we have Chris's guide, Dan Grieb. Now, Dan, say hi for me.
Hey, guys.
All right. So now, Dan, I'm going to ask you before we even bring Chris on. Chris is not the traditional Ironman that's out there. As so many people picture that person who trains 700 hours a day, has a 2% body fat on them because of all the running, swimming, biking that they're doing, for anyone who doesn't know what an Ironman is for some strange reason. But Dan, Chris is something special. Tell us a little bit about Chris before we even bring him on the call.
Yeah, well, Chris is an amazing human being. He's a 21-year-old high school graduate from here in Orlando, Florida, right near me. I had the pleasure of getting to know him as Chris ventured out to do an Ironman. Now, Chris and I met largely because he started out with Special Olympics, doing what we would call sprint triathlons, very short triathlons. And he got the bug, got very good, got too fast for his guide, and was looking for someone a little bit better. He got his father and him approached me about becoming his guide and taking him on to what's called an Olympic distance, which is the distance that they do in the Olympics. Chris and I did our first Olympic, and then we started asking ourselves the question, could Chris do an Ironman? Now, the thing about Chris is Chris has a limitation called Down syndrome. But Chris's limitations are also his superpowers. And I'm hoping that over the next 45 minutes that I get to share with your audience how Chris was able to take his limitations, turn them into his superpowers, and do what others would say were impossible.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, folks, if you don't understand a triathlon, like I said, it's a swim. And Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, 2.4 mile swim to start?
That is correct.
All right. Then it's a 112-mile bike ride, correct? 112 miles?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you finish it off with the easy part, right? And that's running a 26.2-mile full marathon. Folks, this is the ultimate when it comes to competing and proving to your body what you can do. It's a very small percentage of the population that are called Ironman.
You do this over like a week?
Bob, you do it over about a month.
My goodness.
Chris did it in, and again, correct me, Dan, Chris did it in just under 17 hours. Is that correct?
Yep, 16 hours and 45 minutes and I think a few seconds.
I don't know that I can stay awake 16 hours, 45 minutes in one full day. I need more sleep than that. And that's amazing. And then he became the first, and I saw he's in the Guinness World Book of Records now, the first Down syndrome athlete to compete and complete an Ironman. And it's amazing. So folks, be ready for this conversation we're about to have. We're going to bring Chris on. Dan might do a little translation for us. As he jokingly said, he speaks Down syndrome. You might have a little trouble hearing some of the things Chris says, and we'll have him repeat it. But it's going to be an amazing conversation. Chris Nikic, the Ironman himself, welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast.
Thank you.
We love that you were able to find the time in between your training because I know you're not done. You're already training to improve your time, beat your time at the ultimate Ironman, which is in Hawaii. And folks, stay tuned to the end of this episode so you can find out how you can help Chris and Dan head to Hawaii and compete in the ultimate Ironman event. All right, Chris, I got to just start at the beginning. What was the motivation behind wanting to attempt a triathlon? Forget the Ironman, just a triathlon.
My motivation is my dream. I had to make my own money so I could own a house, to have a car, and to marry a woman conditioned love, because for the last 34 years, my dad got my mom, and there's no point in saying smoking hot. Concept of a woman with conditioned love.
Okay, stop there. So what Chris said there's a couple words that I know your audience will have a little bit of trouble with. Is number one, he said that he became a triathlete because he wanted to accomplish his dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Dreams are, number one, to have his own house, because he wants a place that he can be proud of that's his own. He lives with his parents. Currently, he's 21 years old, but he wants to live on his own like you and I do. He wants to own his own car so he can have the freedom to move around like you and I do, to do what he wants to do, not on someone else's schedule, but his own schedule. And last but not least, he wants to marry a woman that looks just like his mom, that's a beautiful blonde like his mom, that can express to him unconditional love like his mom has over the last 21 years of his life. Right, Chris?
Sure.
I don't think he said beautiful, though. I think he referred to the woman he wants to marry slightly different, Dan.
He did. He said smoking hot blonde.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we got that right. That he said smoking hot blonde.
Yes, he did say smoking hot blonde.
All right. Hey, we love being authentic. This guy's a winner, and if it's a smoking hot blonde he's after, who's going to love him unconditionally the way mom has always shown love, we know she's out there for him. And heck, hopefully, maybe she's listening right now, and we can get her connected to Chris. We've got some questions we want to take Chris through. Bob, I know you had one that, being the Ironman you are, of course, you had a few questions for Chris.
Well, Chris, tell me, what was your training like? What did it take to train to do an Ironman? And it sounded like you started small and kind of got bigger. Walk us through your training.
So on Saturdays, I ride 100-mile bike ride
On Saturday,
around the neighborhood.
Around your neighborhood. Okay, what else?
And then Sunday, I run 18 miles. And it does freaking tired.
Yeah, it's a long ways.
And on Friday, I swim 5,000 yards.
So, Chris, what they want to know is, on average, how many hours do you train per day? Let's tell them that. Between
1 year.
No, how many hours per day? Between how many hours? 2 and how many hours a day? 2 and 4. Tell them.
2 hours?
Between 2 and 4 hours a day. And on the weekends, how many hours do we train?
8.
Right, between 6 and 8 hours on the weekends, right? And sometimes those can be bike rides that are 100 miles long. And sometimes there are runs as long as 20 miles just for practice. And sometimes we bike for 30 miles and then we get off our bike and then we run for 10 miles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And go ahead.
You got to practice that transition as well with him. So I know you're working on that as well. Dan, are you always involved in Chris's training, or is it hey, I got things to do today and train on my own. Go hit the pool or get some running in on your own. Or are you there side by side with Chris through all of this?
No, I'm not with Chris through all of his training. He's got a great support structure, starting with his family. His dad is unbelievable. He does a lot of training with his dad. I do all of his technical training with him. So I'll do the open water swims with him. I'll do the long bike rides, the long runs. Number one, his dad, can't keep up with him, cannot bike or run the distances that Chris can. So he'll have to ride like an e-bike behind us, and Chris and I will run together. Chris and I run with a tether. So he's attached to me when we run. So he needs to practice doing that and get used to me constantly pulling him a little bit forward, because he doesn't really have the best ability to navigate distance and time. So he needs me to set the pace and make sure we're running the proper distances.
So it's an amazing commitment from you as well. And nobody succeeds alone. I think that's one of the things, Bob, you'd agree, we've been covering many times in many of our episodes so far. We've always find out it's a support system around. So you're talking, Dan, that Chris has an incredibly strong support system to help him through this opportunity.
Oh, he has a series of athletes that are around him, as well as great family members. And we all kind of split it off so that he, for Chris, this is not about proving someone wrong. He doesn't have a chip on his shoulder. He just wants to be included. Right, Chris?
Sure.
So what does inclusion mean to you? Why don't you tell them?
So inclusion is really the concept of like having people around and be active, be part of the community, so they can live a life of inclusion instead of living a life of isolation.
Great stuff.
So they can be dependent.
So you can be. So what he said is that, I'll summarize that. He said that living a life of inclusion is a life where he's around other people. And Chris loves being around people, don't you?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, people like Chris with Down syndrome, oftentimes they get a little older and they start feeling bad about themselves. They start getting out of shape because they don't have the structure of school anymore. So for Chris, he likes to train Ironman and do the work he does just so he can hang out with. Who do you like to hang out with?
Yeah.
He likes to hang out with his uncle. He likes to hang out with Coach Simone and his training partners, Jennifer and Carlos, which are my best friends, and our coach, Hector. He loves being around. And this is an alternative to the other option, which is a life of isolation, which is where most people with Down syndrome end up. And that leads to health issues, low self-esteem, and bigger problems down the line. Right, Chris?
Yeah.
And you're not going to let that happen to you, right? You have a family now, right?
Yeah.
Right. He not only does he have his family, but now he's got my family and our Ironman family too, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Dan, I heard him say community. He said the word community, and clearly the Ironman is a community. Talk for a second, and Chris can, or maybe you can, Dan, about how the Ironman community has opened their arms to Chris.
Well, I'll let Chris start and then I'll finish. So Chris, how is the Ironman community, all the Ironman people, how have they made you feel when you train with them? Go lean into it.
So they make me feel like they're needed. They had me when I said I'm a triathlete and wanted to compete. And they just loved me because triathlete himself, not only did the Ironman, but people behind the scenes, Jennifer, Carlos, Hector, Dan, I have a mentor, Sophia. I have Marquise as my next training person.
Okay, that's good.
I've got my dad, who's my coach. I've got my mom. She has raised me for 18 years.
Okay, good job. So what Chris was saying there is that, the Ironman community is an amazing community. It's a group of not only some of the best athletes in the world, but some of the best human beings. And what Chris has done is we've actually opened our arms up to Chris and people like Chris and allowed them to enter into our world. But what happened is we were all surprised to find out that Chris actually changed our world. See, before Chris came, we were very A-type people, very competitive, cliquish, that would, all break off in your own groups. I mean, by the nature of training Ironman, it's a selfish thing to do. You have to get up early. You have to eat certain things. You have to go to bed at certain times. You can't wait for other people to swim because if they swim slower than you, you have to swim ahead of them. You have to bike by yourself, run by yourself. It's a lot of individuality. And it's very competitive when you bring that type of A-type personality. Well, Chris does not bring any of that ego to the table. Matter of fact, Chris's disability also is his superpower in that Chris doesn't understand social norms. What he does understand is human connection. He understands human connection at a level that you and I don't. So one of the things that Chris does is he loves to hug people, don't you, buddy?
Yeah.
He likes to hug people. And so he's going to hug you. If he's sad, he's going to give you a hug. And if he's happy, he's going to give you a hug. And if he feels there's a conflict between you, he's going to give you a hug. And he's going to always greet you every time with a hug. Well, what Chris has done is he stood around, he started hugging everybody, and he turned our whole world into a hugging culture. And now, instead of being competitive and sizing each other up before we start training, we're all hugging each other and loving each other. And that's only because of the influence of Chris. And what Chris has also done is he rallied our community to all come together to support him. Because if you're a man or woman, young or old, you want to see Chris win. You want to see a good-hearted person who's doing it for the right reason, just to be included. You want to see him win. So now the cliques have gone away, and we all train together because we all want to see Chris win. We all want to be included in what he's doing. So to summarize all of that, we opened a small part of our world so Chris could be included. And Chris opened all of our worlds bigger so we could all be connected.
It's just amazing, right? How he can open your world, and all we thought at first was we were here to help him, and how he's helped you. Now, I'd love to have him talk about this, Dan, while you're talking about hugging. It seems that him and his dad have a really, really special connection, of course, as you would imagine. It seems that anytime Chris seems to be hitting a wall or coming upon a challenge or needing to pick it up, from having watched this amazing NBC special that they did on Chris, it seems that a hug from dad is the boost that he needs. Can we have Chris talk a moment about just how special that bond is with dad?
Sure. My relationship with my dad is powerful, consistent enough. I challenged the bike because I had poor balance. I need help to get on. I couldn't eat or drink every other crazy Ironman. I had to stop, drink, eat, and keep going. And when I did the bike, I knew that at my 40, I had stepped into the very end pile. And it was so painful. And I knew that the pain was coming. And it went up to my ankle, the whole foot, and my pride parts. And it was so awful. And someone had to strip me down, wash me down, and around my 50, I crashed and skidded my bike. So apparently the bike was out of control. I had no clip-ons. I had no aero-figure-like bike. They're actually thinking of a plan to build a new bike so I could actually lean forward and have less pain, less pressure.
Stop there for a second. Hey, stop there for a second. What they're asking you is, that's great stuff that you're sharing. But what they want to know is that special relationship with your dad. So I'm going to ask you a different question, okay? So when you get really, really tired, right? Mm. And you feel like it's too hard, and who comes up and gives you a hug?
Okay.
Your dad does? And what does that hug do for you? Does that make it, tell them about how it gives you more power and makes you want to go?
So when I hugged my dad, I knew that
everything was going to be okay?
That it's going to be okay.
Yep. What else?
And he told me, you have to ride the last 32 miles to make it to cutoff.
All right, stop there. So I'm going to fill you guys in, and then we're going to tell them about the run too. So Chris crashed his bike, like he said, on the on a descent going 21 miles an hour. He was able to escape injuries.
Oh my goodness.
You scared the death out of his Uncle Dan, though, didn't you, Monkey? And before that, what he said is he had to stop from time to time. We have to stop him every 30 to 40 minutes and get him off his bike so he can eat and drink. He doesn't have the ability to do that while he's cycling.
And getting him off his bike, Dan, isn't just as simple as just someone jumping off their bike.
Nope. I have to physically ride ahead of him and catch him, get him off his bike, and then give him nutrition and give him hydration. Well, at one of our stops around mile, 30 or 40, Chris?
It was 40.
40. He was standing on the side of the road, and he was standing in an ant pile, and red ants were biting him. We had prepared for everything in this race. We had prepared for, bike crashes, and we knew where every hospital was. We knew how to handle anything that came up. We did not prepare for insect bites, fire ants.
Yeah.
So you
can't really prepare for fire ants.
No, he was able to push through that. He was able to push through the crash. But what happened was Chris's disability is an intellectual disability. So what that means is that if you kind of put your hand out and you see you have 5 fingers, those are like the normal brain has 5 lanes of traffic. Well, I want you to imagine Chris, because of this extra chromosome, he only has 2 lanes for the same 5 about 5 lanes of traffic to go down. So whenever we introduce a new issue like an ant bite that he's not familiar with, what happens is all of the processing slows down. When we introduce a bike crash at 21 miles an hour, all the processing slows down. So when the processing slows down, that means the muscles slow down. That means the movement on the bike slows down. He feels like he's giving a good effort, but he's actually going slow. So to summarize, what he was just saying is towards the end of the bike ride, we realized that we were actually behind and we needed to ride faster than we had ever ridden before in practice or in any other race to make the bike cut off. Right, Chris?
Yeah.
And tell him what happened after that. So your dad came up, said, you got to ride fast. He gave you a big hug. And then what did you do?
Okay, so my dad hugs me and he said, you have to ride the last 32 miles. That show would be average to actually make it to the cutoff on time.
That's right.
And then I did that, and then I came on time.
You came in on time, and then from there, we had to start the run.
And from there, we started the run.
Right, and then on the run, you got 10 miles or 13 miles in, and then what happened? What happened to you then?
I knew that I had quit. I knew that the pain was coming to an end.
You hit the wall. Tell them about it.
And then I hit the wall on mile 13. And someone had to call my dad. And my dad came out.
Before you tell them about that, what was hurting? You remember?
Pain.
You had pain. Where was the pain? In your legs, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't move your legs anymore?
No.
You felt like you couldn't move your legs anymore?
No.
Then you were telling Uncle Dan it hurts too bad, right?
Yeah.
Now, with Chris, just so you guys know, a hug for him is a reset. Now, who can give you good hugs that makes you reset, that helps you the best? Me?
Yeah.
Uncle Dan does, and who else? Dad, right?
Yeah.
So there's two people that can get one particular kind of hug. There's 2 men that can get a hug from Chris that nobody else can get. And I call that the hug of vulnerability. When Chris is at his ending point and he needs to know the world's okay, I can give him a hug and it can resolve about 95 to 97% of all of that. But there's a 3% that I just can't get past because I don't have the experience his dad has. He just doesn't, I haven't earned the trust yet. So at mile 13, Chris was cramping, right? He was feeling a lot of pain in his side and he had, what did you have on your feet? Do you remember?
Blisters.
He had blisters on his feet and we knew that this was Nick. Now, one of the things I want to share with you is the day of the race, Chris and I wore tank tops. Remember that, Chris?
Yeah.
And what did you not do before the race? What didn't you do?
Well,
Did you shave?
no.
And Chris didn't shave that morning. And then he gave me hugs, so many hugs, maybe over 100, up to the point we're at right now, that he literally wore the skin off my shoulder. And I had a gigantic cherry on my left shoulder from my skin being removed from all the hugs this monkey gave me with his scruffy chin. You stop laughing. You just laugh at that. You hate it.
Not kidding.
It was a well-earned battle scar, Dan.
He said he's going to do it again to me in Hawaii. No, you're not. All right, so then what happened is we called Nick in to help us with Chris. And Chris,
And that's Dad. Nick is Dad.
Nick is Dad. Now, here's what I want you to hear, Chris. Chris is going to talk about what his dad told him. And then when he does, Chris, Chad, I'd like you to hear what he says, and then let's break it down for your listeners because it's so key important what his dad taught him and what our listeners should do as well. Sound good?
Okay. Perfect.
Chris, tell him what happened at mile 13. You hit the wall. We called Nick, and what happened? Tell him.
So my dad came out and he put me aside.
I told you to take off the what?
And then he said, take off the tether.
Took off your tether and had
because the tether is bad tether.
There was a bad
and then
tether.
my dad had to smack talk with Dan and said, take the tether off. And then my dad hugs me. And he said, what's it going to win? Is it going to be the pain or the dream? And then I said, the dream. And then he said, you have one more loop. And this is it. You're almost an Ironman.
Okay, stop there. That was great.
Dan, I gotta say, I heard that as clear as can be, and I hope everybody heard that. I mean, the message that Dad just gave him of what's gonna win, pain or the dream. I mean, folks, you should be tattooing that on yourself. That is an amazing statement to ask yourself day in and day out.
So let's unpack that a little deeper, okay, Chad? Now,
Please.
First thing here is I want you to understand Chris misspoke a little bit. I want him to clarify this with you. What did he say? Who's going to win, your what or your dream?
So he said the pain?
No, not the pain. What kind of pain?
Fake pain.
Okay. The fake pain going to win or what?
The dream.
Okay, so Chris, tell Chad's audience, what's the difference between fake pain and real pain?
Okay, so real pain is you quit. Fake pain, it magically goes away.
It magically goes away when?
When it stops hurting.
That's right, when you stop working, right? So what Chris just said, good job on that. So what Chris said is the difference between real pain and fake pain is fake pain stops hurting when you stop working. See, that's the issue. If it was real pain, if Chris was really injured, had sprained his ankle or tore his hamstring or something, we would have stopped him. That's real pain. We don't make Chris exercise in real pain. What we make Chris learn is there's a difference between fake pain and real pain. The fake pain goes away when you stop. Now that's an application for Chris's life. See, we understand that this is sports, but sports imitates life and life imitates sports. And we want to teach him, Chris, that life's going to be tough sometimes and you're going to be in pain. Now, if the pain goes away when you stop, like if you're in real estate lead generating and then all of a sudden the pain goes away, then it's not the lead generating activity that's the problem. It's the way you're thinking about the lead generating activity. Or if you're in a relationship and you feel like you're in pain in that relationship and then you just like step away from the relationship, then the pain goes away, then it's not the relationship, it's you're the problem. And there's a fix, an internal fix for you. That's you that can fix that. That's a battle of you versus your dreams. That's a battle of you versus you. And that's what Nick shared with him. And that's a lesson that I would like for everyone to know. The second one here is if I ask Chris right now, there are no cue cards in front of us. Chris, what are your dreams? Tell him.
I have to make my own money so I can be independent.
So you make your own money so you can be independent. And what are the 3 dreams you have?
So here are 3 dreams. One is to have a house. And number 2, to have a car. And 3, to marry a smoking hot. With unconditional love.
Smoking hot blonde with unconditional love, just like your mom?
Yeah.
All right, now here, Chad. That was twice that you heard we've asked him about his dreams and how quickly did he know that what they were?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so Chris has an intimate relationship with his dreams. He sees them every morning when he wakes up, and he says goodnight to them every night when he goes to bed. They're literally written on the walls in front of him. And when he does things, he's doing things to accomplish his dreams. Now, here's what most people think. Most people think that Chris's dream was to become an Ironman. It was never his dream to be an Ironman. Chris doesn't give a crap one way or another whether he does an Ironman or becomes a PGA golfer. Chris wants to be around other people and accomplish his dreams. And he recognized that the way to accomplish his dream was to become an Ironman. It was his goal to be an Ironman, never his dream. So now here we are facing this question of, is your fake pain going to win or are your dreams going to win? Chris's father says, which one's it going to be, Chris? Chris says, my dreams. Then Nick says to me, as Chris's guide, the most honorable thing I've ever heard anyone say to me in my life. I'm 46 years old. I've done a lot of cool things. I played college football. I have 2 sons of my own. I've done a lot in real estate. I've accomplished a lot. But this is the most honorable thing I've ever been said. In the midst of his son, 21 years old, the hardest time he's ever had in his life, physically, when it comes to exercise, Nick, who's a 6'7" tall man, towers above most of us, says out loud, God sent angels to be with my son, and I'm going to let those angels take my son home. And he left and never came back. The amount of trust that he put in me in that moment to give me his 21-year-old son, who was at his most vulnerable state, validated every bad thing that's ever happened in my life.
Mm. Wow. Okay, so folks, remember that the next time you're hurting, and I'm putting air quotes around that, even though no one can see me, right? The next time you're hurting, what's going to win? Is it the fake pain or is it dreams? Now, Bob, we're getting near the end, and there's some things I want to leave at the end, but I know you had one big question you really wanted to be asking for Chris.
Chris, have you always been driven to push yourself beyond the limits? Like, why are you doing these amazing things? And you know, the question now is, Dan, is a little bit strange because now I think we know it's his dreams, right? I mean, he's focused on these dreams. Have you always been focused on this dream, Chris?
Yeah, I have.
Well, hold on. No, wait a second. When did you get focused on your dreams? These particular dreams. When last year, what did you do at the first of the year? You remember? With Dad? With the calendar?
Oh, yeah.
What did your dad tell you to do? So at the beginning of every year, Nick sits down with Chris and says, what do you want to do this year? And tell him about how your dad said you can't get your dreams if you sit on the couch. Tell him that part.
So, when I sat down with Dad, he had me write down what I should do. I basically wrote down is to work hard, follow a simple plan, to get 1% better every day, do it with a smile, and then whenever who makes excuses, it's not me, because we don't tolerate making excuses.
So, Chris, can you tell them, because you said something that they probably don't know what it means. What does it mean to get 1% better every day?
So I started with 1 push-up, sit-up, and squat.
1 push-up, 1 sit-up, and 1 squat.
Then by Ironman Florida, I was up to 200.
By Ironman Florida, you did 200 push-ups, sit-ups, and squats?
Yeah.
Get out of here. Who'd you do that with?
You.
You did it with me? You're crazy. And how many are you going to do before?
I don't believe Dan can actually do that many, so I'm going to have to get proof of that, Chris.
Can Uncle Dan do 200?
And then
Tell him what happens to my face when I do 200 push-ups, 200
his face was still red.
My face turned red? Don't tell him that.
pale, red,
Don't make fun of me.
storm.
Stop it.
Every time I see his red storm face,
Tell him how many push-ups you're going to do before you get to Hawaii in October.
500.
How many sit-ups you're going to do?
500.
And how many squats you're going to do? You're going to do 500.
And his face would be storm red.
Dan's face is going to be red again.
Pure red.
Pure red. Okay. So 1% better is a commitment to get better, 1% better every day. And we want to start what? Fast or slow?
Fast.
No, we don't. We want to start nice and slow with no what? No pain. And then we want to make a commitment. And what are the rules that Dad taught you? Number 1, we don't make what?
No excuses.
No excuses. And we do everything what?
Smart.
Because nobody likes a what?
Grouchy.
Nobody likes a grouchy Ironman. And what's it?
1%.
And get 1% better, right? And those are the rules. And here's the crazy thing, Chad.
Yep.
People hear that and they think like, oh, that's the way that you train a Down syndrome athlete. That's not. That's the way you make human beings better mothers and fathers. That's the way you make men and women better husbands and wives, is a commitment to 1% better. That's how you get out of debt. That's how you build a very fruitful life. Now, Chris, you know, he doesn't have the ability to rationalize everything, but what he does have the ability to do with that amazing mind of his is he has an ability to get 1% better every day. And he wins so slowly that it actually looks like he's losing. But what actually happens for him is he develops a base that you and I don't have, because his limitations force him to have to do the same things over and over and over again. But he gets really, really good at the small things. And he's an example of a small commitment over time, day in and day out, you can be an Ironman. And I know they want to ask you about Mike Riley. You want to tell them about Mike?
Yes. How did it feel to have Mike Riley say, as you come to the finish line, Chris Nikic, you are an Ironman? I mean, everybody that ever gets into the event wants those words said with their name. How did it feel hearing Mike say that as you cross the finish line?
I feel like excited. I mean, when I first heard that Chris Nikic, you're an Ironman, I can eat Waffle House. I can eat smother covered because I'm an Ironman. I eat peanut cakes because I'm an Ironman. I eat double rice because I'm an Ironman.
Okay.
I eat chocolate cake because I'm an Ironman. All this media, all this attention that makes me an Ironman because as an Ironman.
What do the moms say about you?
So after the race, I knew that the moms would automatically send proper messages. And I saw those messages.
What those messages say?
And those messages said, Chris, you're a hero to my kid. And it is possible. Anything. The child can do anything. It's not optional. Having child Down syndrome is a hard thing. Having an expert or a doctor tell their parents that they can't do anything, we can't tolerate that. We need to stop listening to them. We need to take the lid off effective immediately. And we need to endow the kids to actually live a life of independence, to own the house, to own the car, to make their life just like me. And because I felt that I'm needed, I felt that I'm included, and they want to be included. And as a community, I'd like to spread the word out with love over hate. Hate is experts tell them, oh, they're not going to do that. Oh, they're not going to do this.
Okay, good.
Love is love. Love versus hate. So hate is hate.
Okay, that's good.
Love is love. We have bad people. We have good people. Good people can lead up. Like an example.
Hey, that's nice.
Because
That's good. You did good. Hold on.
He's doing great.
Hey,
break it down for us, Dan.
Yeah, let me break that down for you. You're talking a lot. I got to help them. You're having so much fun.
I guess I'm going to Chipotle.
You're not getting Chipotle.
Yeah.
Okay. So what Chris said was, when his parents found out that he was going to be born with Down syndrome, the doctors right out of the gate give you options. And I don't need to tell your audience what those options are, but they're not good options.
Mm-hmm.
Terminate pregnancy, things like that. And the Nikics decided that they were going to raise their boy just like anyone else. And he deserved the chance. Now, the fate of people like Chris oftentimes once they are born, is the doctors will tell the parents that their child won't amount to much and to expect a life of dependence upon them. Well, that leads to low expectations. And what the Nikic family and Chris want to do is they want to raise the lid of what's possible, not only for Chris, but for everyone that follows behind him. Chris is the first person with Down syndrome to complete an Ironman. He'll be the first person to do a lot of things. And largely it's because we don't allow him to make excuses, right, Chris? No excuses, right? You got to say it out loud. They can't see your head shaking. Say no. No, we don't let him make excuses. And we give him an opportunity to become the best he can be. Now, here's the good news. People all around the world reach out to Chris and I, and they say things like, thank you for doing that race because you showed me what's possible for my child. Now, from November 8th, 2020, for the rest of history, when doctors and folks say, hey, you have a child with Down syndrome, you may want to consider your options. Parents are going to say, but wasn't there a person with Down syndrome that completed an Ironman? Why can't my child amount to something? Why can't my child do something great? And so Chris's life and his legacy is just getting started in the world of freeing a whole part of our society that feels like they won't amount to much and like they have to leave their children isolated.
Dan, I think that's so amazing. And the way you say it, the legacy, right? That's one of the key parts at Win, Make, Give. We talk about health, wealth, leadership, and legacy. And boy, this gentleman, Chris, has hit on all of it. Now, we talk about it's Win, Make, Give. And we're talking about winners here in season 2. That's our focus. And boy, if anybody listened to this and did not hear a winner in this conversation and take so many lessons from it, shame on you. But it's Win, Make, Give. And I want you to take a second for us as we get near the end of this conversation and talk about how our audience can give Chris the opportunity to compete in the ultimate Ironman race in Hawaii.
Well, thank you, Chad. Yeah, and number one, thank you to all your listeners for even listening to this. You know, that's all Chris really wants is for people to know about him and what he's doing, and hopefully that they'll see people like him in the community and feel free to go up and include them into their lives. But if you'd like to offer some type of financial support, or if Chris's story has moved you at any level, we recently started a GoFundMe. Now, the Nikic family is a very proud and private family. I had to beg them to let me do this, and we started a GoFundMe for Chris to go to do the Ironman Hawaii. It's an invitation-only event. That means you must qualify to go. And it's very, very expensive. Chris doesn't just go to Hawaii once, and he doesn't go there just before the race. Chris has to go there multiple times with me and other teammates, as well as his parents, for him to acclimate to the climate of Hawaii, the course of Hawaii. Him and I have to arrive at least 2 weeks in advance for him to start training there, even though he'll train here, training there as well. And it comes at a cost. Now, there's a tremendous cost to the family in terms of just the exposure of having their son in the limelight. If you've never gone viral, we've gone viral. Once you go viral, you understand it's a totally different thing. But it also comes at a major financial cost. For Chris to do this Hawaii thing, we're thinking it's going to cost somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000 for all of his partners to get out there. And what we're asking is that our community step up and not make it, a financial burden of the Nikic family, but maybe they'll all pick up a few dollars here and there. And the way that you can do that is by going to Chris's GoFundMe. It's under Chris Nikic, which is Nikic, under GoFundMe. It's under sports, and it's not a charitable donation. It's just an opportunity to help Chris financially get to Hawaii with all of his teammates, so he can, hopefully shock the world again and raise the ceiling for people just like him with intellectual disabilities all around the world.
Well, we have an amazing audience, and I'm sure now that they've heard that they can go to find Chris on the GoFundMe. That's Chris Nikic. It's Nikic under the sports on GoFundMe. It's part of the win, make, give concept that we're here for. We want to follow Chris. We want to stay, following this amazing winner. We want to track his journey, his training, his successes. What are the best ways to do it? Is he on Instagram? How can we follow Chris and stay a part of his story?
Absolutely. So you can follow him on Instagram under Chris Nikic, or as well as follow me, which is just D Grieb, DGRIEB. And if you really would like to buy one of Chris's t-shirts, he's got a 1% Better t-shirt on his website, which is chrisnikic.com. So Instagram is Chris Nikic. His website's Chris Nikic. And of course, you can always check in with me too at D Grieb. I'm also on Instagram.
Well, on behalf of the Win, Make, Give audience, Bob, myself, Ben Kinney, Dan, we want to thank you for coming along as his guide, not only during the race, but during the interview. And Chris, we want to thank you for breaking barriers with what you've done and continuing to show us all how 1% better every day can impact so many lives if we all went and followed your example.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Bob,
guys.
that
Have
was
a fantastic day.
Wow, was right. I'm sitting here. I don't know when the last time I ran was, Chad. I could probably, in my head, conjure up the last time I swam more than 100 yards. Like, oh my goodness, this kid is just unbelievable.
Yeah, amazing. And 21 years old and overcoming Down syndrome to be able to do this. The Ironman is one of those races that most people don't take on. I mean, like they said, the commitment to it, the time away from your family, the time away from everything to be able to be trained for something that, and I'm going to tell you, he did it in just under 17 hours. And that's not a long, there are people who take a little longer than that, right? Wow. Who are out there still competing. It's amazing in the Ironman world. And I'm so glad we got the chance to talk to him. Bob, what's the one, and I might be setting it up a little obviously here probably for you, but what's the one thing that you're taking away from this conversation with this winner? You're
gonna limit me to one. The 1%, get 1% better each day. While we were having that conversation with him, I was on his website and he's got this 1% challenge, chrisnikic.com. This 1% challenge, but there's something really fascinating in there about his 1% challenge, which is he also challenges you to go find somebody else and help them get 1% better as well. There is so much to unpack in this thing. That 1% is amazing. I think his dad's commentary around fake pain versus the dream, which one are you going to let win? I mean, there's a lot to unpack here today, Chad. Like my brain is swimming a little bit.
Yeah, that line that his dad said to him, what's going to win, the fake pain or the dream? I mean, wow. If you know your dreams, there's no way you let fake pain win.
I think I liked how Dan broke down the fact that like his dream wasn't to run the Ironman either, right? Like
that was a goal.
Yeah, that's right? A dream that could, like, if he was putting the pain against the dream of finishing the Ironman, like that the pain might win there. But when he realized like he was very focused, and you could tell he was able to spout those, his three dreams off. His commitment to those dreams is what won the day, right? It wasn't the commitment to winning the Ironman; it was the commitment to what that meant for him.
Yeah, it was amazing. So glad we had the time to talk to him. All right, so audience out there, let's remember it is Win, Make, Give. So maybe you do have a moment. Maybe you can go check out that GoFundMe and help Chris go become part of the Hawaii Ironman. Or maybe you can visit chrisnikic.com and get yourself a shirt and support the organization that way. We hope that you'll come join us in our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/win-make-give, where we can talk about this amazing story and, of course, so many other winning stories that we will be covering here in season 2. Until our next episode, Bob, remember, do good.